Okay, everyone, thank you for your time. Look, I want you to think about American history for a second. What if I told you that a huge piece of it, the story of one of our most beloved national parks, is a complete and total fabrication? I'm not talking about a little misunderstanding. I mean a deliberate, carefully crafted cover-up for a story so unbelievably terrifying, it had to be buried alive under a century of gift shops and postcards. That quote? That's from the surgeon of the very first military group to officially enter Yosemite Valley. He saw the unbelievable beauty, the sheer scale of the place, and he felt fear. We're here today because that one word, that's the key. That's the thread you pull that unravels this whole thing. You see, the history books, they call it the Mariposa War, a tiny, insignificant skirmish to deal with a few native tribes. That is the lie. The truth is, the Mariposa Battalion wasn't an army. It was a hazmat team, sent on a secret mission of biological containment and total extermination. And here it is, side by side, the cover story versus the cold, hard reality. On one side, you've got this neat little military story we tell ourselves. But on the other, you have a desperate Black Ops mission to sanitize a hot zone and liquidate the parasitic entity that had taken root there. Now, every great horror story needs a great monster. And our monster, well, it isn't some count in a cape from Eastern Europe. No, this is a predator born from starvation and madness, right here in the Americas, something that has been hiding in the shadows of this continent for centuries. Let's give it a name, the Pishtaco. You probably haven't heard of it, but the terror it represents is primal. You gotta forget everything you know about vampires. This thing doesn't drink your blood. It's a physical parasite that hunts humans for their fat. It's a living echo of desperate conquistadors who turned to cannibalism to survive, and in doing so, became something else. And the difference is everything. So how did it get to California? Simple. It migrated. Fleeing persecution in South America, a whole clan of these things embedded themselves in the famous Anza expedition. But instead of settling down on the coast, they looked east. They saw the uncharted, granite fortress of the Sierra Nevada, and they recognized it was the perfect place to build a nest. They deserted, pushed inland, and founded a new kingdom. Which brings us to the real star of our story, Yosemite Valley. We see a cathedral of nature. They saw an impenetrable prison. For nearly 100 years, it was their farm, their abattoir. And once you learn to read the secret language of the landscape, you will never, ever look at it the same way again. It starts with a name. We all think Yosemite means grizzly bear. It's a convenient, almost cute mistranslation. The real Miwok word, Yosemite, means something far simpler and far more chilling. They are killers. It wasn't a name for the place, it was a warning label slapped on it by everyone else. And what did the people inside this quarantine zone call their home? Awani. The official translation is lovely, deep grassy valley. But the real translation, the one that tells the truth, place of the gaping mouth. The valley wasn't a home, it was a living organism, a mouth that had to be fed. And all of a sudden, the entire geography of the park just clicks into place with this horrifying logic. Bridal Veil Falls, with its local legend of an evil wind, becomes the primary hunting ground. The royal arches, which have these weird thermal properties, that's the devil's incubator, the nest. And that beautiful, idyllic valley floor, that was the pasture, where the human cattle were raised and periodically harvested. Now, this whole story revolves around two men, two historical figures whose names are carved all over this part of California. But history only tells you what they did. It doesn't tell you why. They weren't fighting over gold or land. They were playing a much, much deadlier game for the future of the entire region. First up, our protagonist, Major James Savage. History paints this guy as a pure villain, a greedy gold miner who hated the local tribes. But the reality is so much more complicated. Savage had indigenous wives. He spoke their languages. He didn't lead that battalion out of greed or hate. He led it out of pure terror. And his adversary, Chief Tanaya, he's remembered as this proud, defiant chief defending his home. But he wasn't a king protecting his people. He was a warden managing his livestock. His job wasn't to lead the Awanichi people, it was to feed the dark gods they served, and most importantly, keep them a secret from the outside world. He's not a villain, he's a tragic figure trapped in an absolutely impossible situation. So, our reluctant hero has to march his hazmat team right into the vaping mouth of the valley to face the warden and his monsters. And this brings us to the climax.
You have to ask yourself, how do you kill an enemy that nests inside solid granite? You can't shoot it, you can't charge it, you have to perform a large-scale exorcism. You have to literally burn it out of the rock. This is where the whole scorched earth campaign from the history books comes from. It wasn't just mindless destruction, it was a precise 3-step tactical protocol. Step 1, fumigate. They torched the entire valley floor, forcing thick, choking smoke up into the cave systems to attack the creature's high-altitude respiratory systems. Step 2, corner. The smoke and fire drives the panicked monsters out of their nests and onto the high cliff ledges. Step 3, incinerate. From Glacier Point, Savage's men push massive burning embers over the side, creating a literal waterfall of fire to cook the creatures alive on the rock face below. And here's the most twisted part of the entire story. This act of tactical extermination, this war crime against the undead, was so visually stunning that in the 1870s, they started doing it again for fun. It became the world-famous Yosemite Firefall, a beloved tourist attraction that ran for almost 100 years. A beautiful lie with the grimmest origin story you could possibly imagine. But the story doesn't end there, because our hero, Major Savage, is dead just 1 year later. Official story says he was killed in a petty duel, a nice, clean ending. But history always leaves these little nagging questions. Like, if his death was so simple, why was his body dug up and secretly reburied 4 different times? Because the truth is, you can't walk through a plague zone without getting some of it on you. They burned the nest, sure, but they didn't get the alpha. They won the battle, but the virus got out. And here is the devastating final truth. The mission was a failure. The king, the original creature, escaped into the high country. Major Savage wasn't killed in a duel. He was put down by his own men because he'd been infected in the final battle. They kept moving his body because he wouldn't stay in the ground. And that original threat, the alpha, he's still out there, alone, ancient, starving, and just waiting in the granite peaks for the world to forget all about him. And that right there is the beauty of this concept. That's the pitch. We change nothing. Not one date, not one name, not one recorded event. It all fits perfectly. The only thing we are changing is the why. We're providing the hidden motive that turns a confusing piece of American history into a terrifying, unforgettable epic. A brand new American myth. So, who wants to go camping?